So, what if I told you that, like, every single hour you have ever spent diligently highlighting textbooks,
Oh, the highlighting.
right? Color coding your notes, rereading those endless slide decks for work. What if I told you all of that has actually guaranteed that your brain will forget that information?
Yeah, it is a really harsh reality to confront.
It's a gut punch.
It is because, we are essentially talking about millions of hours of human potential that are just, well, lost to a cognitive illusion.
That is a staggering thought. And if you're listening to this right now, whether you're prepping for a massive board meeting or, trying to finally learn conversational Spanish, or maybe you just want to actually retain all that nonfiction you read on your commute.
Which is incredibly hard to do, by the way.
So hard. But you are going to want to sit down for this one. Welcome to a brand new deep dive. Today, we are going on a bit of a demolition mission.
I like that phrasing. Demolition.
Yeah, because we're taking almost everything you and I were taught in school about how to study, and we are just throwing it straight out the window.
Good riddance.
Right. And in its place, we're going to construct this bulletproof, totally science-backed system for lifelong memory and skill mastery.
And the demolition really is entirely necessary here. We're pulling our insights today from a truly paradigm-shifting source.
Yes, the book.
Right, make it stick. It's written by cognitive scientists Henry L. Roediger III and Mark A. McDaniel, alongside a storyteller, Peter C. Brown.
Such a great team for this.
Exactly, because they've synthesized decades of rigorous empirical research into human memory. But, what makes this material so compelling isn't just that it gives us a new instruction manual for learning.
It does, but
Right, but it's how thoroughly it exposes the ways our brains actively deceive us, like tricking us into believing we're mastering material when we are merely glancing at it.
okay, let's unpack this, because
Yeah.
that is a wild accusation to hurl at our own biology, right?
It is.
Our brains are deliberately tricking us. I mean, before we can start building these bulletproof habits, we really have to understand this trap. Let's look at the classic scenario.
The study session.
Yeah, you finish a dense chapter, your page is just glowing with neon yellow ink.
Oh, so much highlighter.
So much. And you close the book feeling like incredibly confident. But then 2 days later, someone asks you a basic question about that chapter, and your mind is just, it's white noise. Why does that happen?
It really comes down to this phenomenon that cognitive psychologists call perceptual fluency.
Perceptual fluency, okay?
Right. So when you read a page of text for the second or, third or fourth time, your visual cortex processes those specific shapes and words much faster than it did the first time.
Because it's seen them before.
Exactly. The vocabulary is familiar. The sentence structure just flows easily. And because this visual processing has become effortless, your brain registers the lack of friction.
And it sends a signal.
A completely false signal. It whispers, hey, this is easy to process, therefore I possess this knowledge.
Wow. So my brain is essentially grading my reading speed, not my actual comprehension.
Precisely.
I'm mistaking the ease of looking at a page for the ability to actually use the information on it.
Yeah, that disconnect is the absolute core of the illusion of knowing. You are confusing passive recognition with active recall.
Right.
To use like a real-world parallel, it's the difference between recognizing a song on the radio and actually being able to play it on the piano from memory.
Oh, that's a great way to put it. Recognizing the melody requires almost zero cognitive effort.
None at all. You just hear it and say, oh, I know this one.
But sitting at the keys and actually producing the melody, that requires immense structural knowledge.
Exactly. When you reread and highlight, you're just listening to the song.
I have to push back hard on this, though, because the biological argument feels incomplete to me.
How so?
Well, if rereading and highlighting are so fundamentally useless for long-term retention, why does it feel so incredibly rewarding? Like, when I'm sitting there with a marker, finding the bold terms, drawing neat little boxes around key concepts, I get a very real hit of dopamine.
You feel productive.
Yes, I feel incredibly productive. Why would human evolutionary biology reward me for a totally useless behavior?
That is a brilliant question. And the answer lies in understanding what the human brain actually prioritizes.
Which is what?
Well, your brain is not optimized to be a straight-A student or, a flawless corporate presenter. It is highly optimized to be an energy miser.
An energy miser, meaning it wants to hoard its calories.
Completely. Thinking like true structural cognitive change is biologically expensive. It requires immense metabolic energy to weave new concepts into your existing neural networks.
So it's protecting its calorie reserves by trying to avoid hard thinking.
Yes, The brain wants to conserve energy at all costs. So highlighting a textbook or organizing your notes by color.
The fun stuff.
Right, the fun stuff. These are tasks with a very clear, immediate visual completion state, but they require almost zero metabolic cognitive load.
You finish the page is yellow, task complete.
Exactly. So the brain rewards you with a hit of dopamine because you successfully completed a task while conserving energy. It's basically a biological loophole.
Wow. So you feel the satisfaction of work without doing the actual heavy lifting of learning.
That's exactly it.
That is a massive gut punch for anyone who has spent, a whole weekend locked in a library feeling so proud of their beautifully color-coded binders.
It hurts to hear.
We're basically getting a chemical reward for taking the path of least resistance.
And that path of least resistance only yields short-term familiarity. It decays rapidly.
So it's gone by Monday.
Oh, easily. If the learning process feels incredibly smooth, comfortable, and effortless in the moment, you are almost certainly not building durable neural pathways.
Which means we've been measuring our progress entirely backward. We've been looking at the feeling of ease as a sign of success.
When in reality, ease is the primary symptom of failure.
Okay, so if cramming information into the brain from the outside creates this false illusion, how do we reverse the current? We need a completely different biological process.
We must fundamentally reverse the flow. If passive studying is about shoving information in, true mastery requires consistently practicing pulling information out.
Pulling it out.
Yes. And this brings us to the absolute bedrock of modern cognitive science, active retrieval.
Retrieval practice. Okay, so this means closing the book, putting away the slides, and reaching into the dark to find the answer.
That's exactly it. When you close the book and force yourself to recall a core concept without a safety net, you're engaging in a process that physically alters the memory trace.
It changes the brain physically.
Yes. Let's look at how we traditionally view testing. In the standard education system, a test is viewed merely as a dipstick.
Like checking the oil in your car.
Right. It's just a tool to measure what you already know, like a final judgment at the end of a semester.
Right. The test is just the scoreboard. It's not the game itself.
But the research in Make It Sick proves that is entirely wrong. The test is the game.
The test is the game.
Every single time you force your brain to pull a concept or, a formula or a fact out of your memory, you aren't just measuring it, you are mutating it.
Mutating it. Making it stronger.
Yes, you're forging deeper, wider neural connections. You are making that specific memory vastly stronger, more accessible, and highly resistant to future forgetting.
So the act of retrieval is actually the learning event.
It is the most powerful learning event you can engage in.
See, that fundamentally reframes how I look at flashcards or self-quizzing.
Yeah.
Because I used to think I shouldn't test myself until I was ready.
Right. Wait until you've memorized it perfectly.
Exactly, until it was locked in. But you're saying the actual struggle to retrieve the memory is the mechanism that creates the memory.
The struggle is the active ingredient. Without it, you were just painting over rust.
Okay, but wait, what happens when I reach in and there's just nothing there? What if I try to retrieve a concept and I completely blank, or worse, I guess, and I get it completely wrong?
A lot of people worry about that.
Right. Because the old school logic would say I'm just reinforcing a mistake in my brain. Like I'm practicing bad habits.
And that old school logic has been completely debunked. This brings us to a really crucial concept called generation.
Generation?
Yeah. Generation is the act of actively trying to answer a question or solve a problem before you are shown the solution.
Trying before knowing.
Exactly. Let's step away from the textbook for a second. Imagine someone hands you a complex, 1,000-piece puzzle.
Okay. I love puzzles.
But they don't give you the picture on the box, and they completely refuse to give you any instructions.
Oh, I would be furious. I'd probably sit there for an hour trying to jam pieces together based entirely on shape or a tiny fleck of color.
It would be complete chaos.
It would be so frustrating.
It would be chaotic, and you would make hundreds of mistakes. But think about what's actually happening in your brain during that hour of frustration.
I'm getting stressed out.
You're stressed, but you are actively analyzing shapes. You're categorizing colors, testing hypotheses, and searching for potential fits.
Oh, I see.
You are activating all of your existing spatial knowledge networks. Now, imagine after an hour of that massive struggle, I finally hand you the picture on the box.
I would devour that picture. It would instantly make sense of all the chaos I had just been sifting through.
Exactly. Your brain was primed to receive the solution. By struggling and failing, you created a conceptual hook in your mind.
A conceptual hook.
Right. Because you experienced the friction of generation, You will understand and remember the complete picture infinitely better than if I had just assembled the puzzle for you from the very start.
You know, this reminds me of a very visceral experience I had.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a few years ago, I visited a brand new city,
Hmm.
and my phone died right as I stepped off the train.
Oh, no. It's a
Yeah.
nightmare.
Total nightmare. I spent an hour just wandering around, completely lost, trying to find my hotel. I was frustrated, taking wrong turns, hitting dead ends.
Just purely struggling.
Right. Finally, I went into a cafe, charged my phone for 5 minutes, and looked at the map. And in that single instant, looking at the screen, the entire city just clicked into place.
Because you had the context.
Exactly. I saw the streets I had just walked down.
Oh.
And to this day, I can still navigate that specific neighborhood flawlessly. If I had just followed the little blue GPS dot from the very beginning,
You wouldn't remember a single street name.
not a single one.
That is a flawless real-world application of generation.
Yeah.
Following the blue GPS dot is perceptual fluency. It's easy, it requires no metabolic energy, and it leaves absolutely no lasting memory.
Wow.
But wandering around lost, that's generation. The mental exertion of being lost, of making wrong turns, it primes your brain to absorb the spatial data the second you finally see the map.
So the struggle is mandatory.
It is. We have to completely rewire our emotional relationship with mistakes. Failing during practice is not a lack of aptitude.
It's not proof that I'm dumb.
Not at all. It's an essential structural stepping stone for neuroplasticity. The beauty of being wrong is that it creates the void that knowledge perfectly fills.
The beauty of being wrong. I love that phrasing. It really takes the shame out of the struggle.
It should.
Okay, so we've established a new baseline for how to engage with material. We cannot shove it in. We must force it out. We have to retrieve it, and we must attempt to generate answers, even if we're just stumbling in the dark.
Exactly.
But if we accept this new method, we immediately run into a scheduling problem, right? Like, when are we supposed to do this?
The timeline is critical.
Let's say I have a massive certification exam coming up. I sit down on a Sunday night, I lock the door, and I do 500 flashcards. I am doing active retrieval, I'm generating answers, I'm making mistakes and correcting them.
You're doing all the right verbs.
Right, I'm doing all the right verbs, but I'm doing them all at once. Does that still work?
It will work brilliantly for about 24 to 48 hours.
Wait, so it's still just cramming?
It is high-quality cramming, but it is cramming nonetheless.
Okay.
I mean, if your only goal is to pass a test on Monday morning and you do not care if you forget everything by Thursday, then mass retrieval will get you over the finish line.
But that's usually not the goal for, like, career skills.
Right. If you're trying to build durable, lifelong knowledge, if you want to actually be an expert in your field, cramming guarantees catastrophic forgetting over the coming weeks.
Catastrophic forgetting.
Yes. To lock information into your long-term memory, you must introduce the variable of time. You have to utilize spaced practice.
Spaced practice, which means deliberately inserting gaps between the times you touch the material.
Correct.
But why is the gap so essential? If I'm doing the hard work of retrieval, why does my brain care if I do it in one 5-hour block versus 5 one-hour blocks over a week?
To understand why the brain demands time, we have to look at how biological memory is constructed. It's not like saving a file to a hard drive, where the data is just instantly written and permanent.
It's messier than that.
Much messier. Think of memory formation more like building a massive suspension bridge in your mind.
Okay, I'm picturing like the Golden Gate Bridge.
Yeah.
Huge cables, massive concrete towers.
Right. If you try to pour all the concrete for those massive towers in a single afternoon, what happens?
Well, the concrete at the bottom hasn't had time to cure, so the entire structure is going to buckle under the wet weight of the new layers. It'll just collapse.
Precisely. The materials require a curing process, and learning operates on the exact same structural principle.
Oh, wow.
If you practice a single complex skill continuously for 5 hours straight, you are just pouring wet concrete onto wet concrete.
It's just a puddle.
Yes. Your brain simply does not have the biological capacity to consolidate all of that raw data at once. You must step away and let the mental structure set.
So what is actually happening in the brain during that downtime? Because from the outside, it feels like I'm just abandoning my studies. It feels, well, lazy.
It is the furthest thing from lazy. Biologically, the downtime is when the actual magic happens.
Really?
Yes. During the time gaps between practice sessions, and most critically during deep sleep, your brain undergoes this highly active process called synaptic consolidation.
Synaptic consolidation.
Right. The short-term memory traces you created during study, which are fragile and highly susceptible to being overwritten, are physically reorganized.
So the brain is basically doing administrative work while I'm asleep?
It is doing heavy construction. It trims away the unnecessary neural connections, strengthens the essential pathways, and most importantly, it cross-references the new information with your older, pre-existing memories.
Like weaving it in.
Exactly. It takes the fragile new data and anchors it deep into the bedrock of your long-term storage. But, and here's the part that most people find deeply uncomfortable.
Uh-oh.
For spaced practice to be effective, you must allow a healthy degree of forgetting to occur between your sessions.
Okay, stop right there.
I know it sounds counterintuitive.
You are telling me that I should deliberately allow myself to start forgetting the material I just worked so hard to learn.
Yes.
If you're a listener prepping for a major career milestone, that sounds like terrible advice. That sounds absolutely terrifying.
It induces panic, for sure.
Right. My instinct is to keep the information constantly spinning on a plate so I never lose it. Why is this temporary panic a good thing?
I totally understand the fear, but you have to trust the biology here. Remember our rule. True learning requires metabolic friction.
Okay, friction.
If you review your flashcards every single hour, the information is just floating in your short-term working memory. It is right at the surface.
So it's easy.
It's effortless.
Mm.
And because retrieving it is effortless, the memory trace does not get any stronger. You are not challenging the bridge.
I'm just walking across the same freshly paved road before the weather hits it.
Yes. But if you wait 2 or 3 days, the natural forgetting curve kicks in. The memory begins to fade.
And then what?
When you finally sit down to practice again, you won't have immediate access to it. You will feel that very real sense of panic. You will have to dig deep, exert conscious effort, and really struggle to pull that fading memory back to the surface.
And that struggle is what we want.
It is everything. That extra mental exertion required to retrieve a fading memory acts as a massive stress test on the neural pathway.
Like putting heavy trucks on the bridge.
Exactly. When you successfully pull it back, the brain responds by thickening that pathway, making the resulting memory exponentially stronger and much slower to decay the next time.
Wow.
By allowing yourself to forget a little bit, you drastically increase the cognitive load of the next retrieval.
That makes perfect sense. If you never stress test the cables of the bridge, you never know if it can handle a hurricane.
Precisely.
Spacing out the practice is the storm. So the paradox here is that by studying less frequently, but with much higher intensity during the retrieval, we actually retain vastly more.
You spend significantly less total time studying, but your retention timeline stretches from days to decades.
All right, so space practice dictates the timeline. It gives us our schedule. Let's say I have mapped it out. I'm going to study my new coding language or, my Spanish vocabulary on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays.
A great schedule.
But this brings us to what I actually do during that 1-hour block on Monday. My natural instinct, and I think everyone's natural instinct, is to pick one specific topic, say past tense verbs, and drill it relentlessly for the entire hour until I am completely flawless at it.
Get it perfect before moving on.
Right. I want to clear that hurdle before I move on to the next one. But based on everything we've uncovered so far, I have a sinking feeling you're going to tell me this is another biological trap.
I am. It is perhaps the most pervasive and destructive illusion in all of education and corporate training.
Wow, really?
What you are describing is known as masked or blocked practice.
Blocked practice, meaning practicing a single skill in a massive block of time?
Yes. It's the intuitive way we all try to master something. Let's look at the classic sports example provided in the research.
Okay, let's hear it.
Picture a golfer at a driving range. They want to improve their chip shot. So they pull out their pitching wedge, they drop 20 golf balls in the exact same patch of grass, and they aim at the exact same flag 30 yards away.
And by ball number 5, they're getting close. By ball number 15, they are dropping it right next to the pin. They feel like an absolute champion.
They do.
They're seeing undeniable real-time improvement.
They're seeing performance, but they are not experiencing learning.
Wait, what's the difference?
That rapid surge in accuracy is a complete illusion. The golfer has simply calibrated their short-term muscle memory to that exact swing, with that exact club, from that exact lie, with that exact win.
Oh, I see.
They have optimized for a static, unchanging environment.
But the real world is never static.
Never. When that golfer steps onto an actual course on Saturday, they will never hit the same shot twice in a row.
Right, they'll hit a massive drive, followed by a delicate iron shot from the rough, followed by a putt on a slanted green.
Exactly. The terrain, the weather, the club, And the required mental state change entirely every 3 minutes. The blocked practice at the driving range did absolutely nothing to prepare their brain for the chaotic, dynamic shifting of a real game.
So how do we mimic the chaos of the real game when we are just sitting at our desks trying to learn? How do we train for unpredictability?
We use a technique called interleaving.
Interleaving.
Yes. Instead of practicing one isolated skill in a neat block, you deliberately mix up different topics, problem types, or skills within a single session.
Give me a concrete example of this. How would this look for a student?
Let's take a mathematics student. In a traditional textbook, a student reads a chapter on finding the volume of a sphere, and then they are given 20 practice problems at the end of the chapter.
Classic homework.
Right. But because they are in the volume chapter, the student already knows what formula to apply before they even read the word problem. They don't have to diagnose the issue, they just plug the numbers in.
Right, the thinking has already been done for them by the table of contents.
Exactly. But with interleave practice, you take a volume problem, a perimeter problem, an area problem, and an angle trajectory problem, and you shuffle them randomly into a single worksheet.
Oh, wow. So every single question is a completely different type of puzzle. The whiplash must be intense.
The cognitive whiplash is the entire point. If we connect this to the bigger picture, think about this like rendering a massive open-world video game.
Okay.
If you stand in one spot in the game, the console only has to render that one room. It's easy. That's blocked practice.
Right, low processing power.
But if you are sprinting through a forest, jumping into a car, and driving into a city, the game engine has to dynamically load entirely new environments, physics rules, and textures every single second.
That requires massive processing power.
Yes. Interleaving forces your brain to act like that high-end game engine. When the problems are mixed up, you cannot just plug in numbers. You must first analyze the problem, discriminate it from the others, and actively select the correct formula from your mental toolkit before you even begin the math.
You're figuring out what the problem is, not just how to solve it.
You are training the crucial skill of diagnosis.
I am listening to this, and I completely grasp the logic. It's undeniable. But as a human being, I am thinking about the emotional toll of this kind of practice.
It's heavy.
If I am learning something completely new, I'm already insecure. I want the comfort of knowing I got 5 things right in a row. With interleaving, you are intentionally robbing the learner of that comfort.
Completely.
You are making yourself feel disorganized, slower, and objectively worse during the practice session.
And that emotional frustration is the barrier to entry for true mastery.
Yeah.
If you're sitting there listening to this and thinking, you know, I don't have time to be frustrated and messy when I study, I just need to get through these flashcards, you have to realize that this friction is exactly what buys your time back in the long run.
The messy practice is the shortcut.
Yes. Interleaving feels chaotic, but the empirical data is definitive. It produces dramatically superior long-term retention and transferability. If you want to be able to apply your knowledge in a boardroom negotiation, a medical emergency, or a championship game, you must train your brain to identify the problem before it solves the problem. Messy practice prepares you for a messy reality.
We are painting a very specific picture here. Testing instead of reading, spacing things out so we panic about forgetting, interleaving topics so we constantly have cognitive whiplash.
It's a lot.
Every single one of these strategies is about purposefully throwing sand into the gears of our own brain. We are engineering friction.
We are. And in the realm of cognitive science, we have a very specific vocabulary for this engineered friction. We call them desirable difficulties.
Desirable difficulties, it sounds like an oxymoron.
It really does.
Usually difficulty is the thing we pay software developers millions of dollars to eliminate from our lives.
It does sound contradictory, but it perfectly encapsulates the master framework of the research. Desirable difficulties are short-term obstacles that deliberately slow down your initial performance.
They feel bad in the moment.
Right. They make you feel as though you're making far less progress in the moment, but they trigger the deep cognitive processing required for permanent memory consolidation.
We do need to draw a very clear line here, though, because not all difficulty is created equal.
Absolutely not.
Like if I'm trying to study astrophysics and my textbook is printed in a microscopic, blurry font, or if my study group is incredibly toxic and stressful, those things are difficult. But they aren't exactly turning me into Stephen Hawking.
That is a critical distinction. We must aggressively separate desirable difficulties from undesirable difficulties.
Okay, define the difference.
An undesirable difficulty is an obstacle that does not serve a clear structural learning purpose. Poorly formatted materials, confusing explanations, sleep deprivation, overwhelming anxiety, these are purely destructive.
Just friction for friction's sake.
Exactly. Your brain should not be wasting its limited metabolic energy fighting a bad PDF layout or a toxic manager. It should be fighting to retrieve and connect the underlying concepts.
Got it.
A desirable difficulty is a targeted, purposeful challenge that forces your brain to engage in retrieval, generation, or elaboration.
Okay, let's pull the thread on that last word, elaboration. Because real learning isn't just about memorizing 1,000 isolated flashcards and storing them in a mental filing cabinet. To actually be an expert, you have to build an interconnected web of knowledge.
Correct.
Where does elaboration fit into this toolkit?
Elaboration is the mechanism we use to weave isolated facts into a tapestry of understanding. It's the process of giving new material personal meaning by expressing it in your own words and explicitly connecting it with things you already know.
So hooking the new stuff to the old stuff.
Yes, the more you can anchor a novel, abstract concept to a familiar, pre-existing memory, the deeper it beds into your neural architecture.
So what does this all mean? Let's make this actionable. I'm staring at a dense report on supply chain logistics. How do I elaborate? What is a specific technique I can use right now?
One of the most powerful forms of elaboration, heavily supported by the research, is the act of translation. You ask yourself a simple question. How would I explain this complex concept to a 10-year-old child?
Oh, I see. Because you can't rely on industry jargon.
Not at all.
If you try to explain supply chain logistics to a 10-year-old using words like synergy, optimization, and throughput, they will just stare at you. You have to strip away the armor.
Precisely. Jargon is often a mask for a lack of true understanding.
Oh, that's so true.
When you are forced to strip away the specialized vocabulary and find a real-world metaphor comparing a supply chain to a river or, a grocery store restock, you are not just dumbing it down.
Yeah.
You are actively constructing what cognitive scientists call a mental model.
A mental model. That phrase gets tossed around constantly in Silicon Valley and leadership seminars, but what is it literally inside our brains?
A mental model is a highly organized internal representation of an external reality. It is a deeply interconnected framework of knowledge that allows you to instinctively analyze situations, predict outcomes, and solve novel problems without having to calculate every single variable from scratch.
Give me an example of someone using a mental model.
Consider a grandmaster in chess. When a novice looks at a chessboard, they see 32 individual wooden pieces that move in specific, isolated ways.
It's just overwhelming data.
Exactly. But when a grandmaster looks at the same board, they do not see individual pieces. They see a mental model.
They see the big picture.
They see interconnected lines of force, zones of control, structural weaknesses, and strategic possibilities stretching 10 moves into the future. They chunk the information into recognizable patterns.
That is fascinating. It's the difference between memorizing the exact turn-by-turn directions to get to one specific grocery store versus actually possessing a map of the entire city in your head.
That's a perfect analogy.
Right, because if a road is closed, the person with the memorized directions is paralyzed. The person with the mental model just takes a different street.
Exactly. And the only way to forge those rich, adaptable mental models is by subjecting yourself to the desirable difficulties we've discussed. You have to retrieve, you have to interleave, and you have to elaborate.
And once you have that model,
When you possess robust mental models, learning new information in your field becomes almost effortless because you aren't adding a fact to an empty pile. You are just attaching a new leaf to a massive, deeply rooted tree.
okay, this is an incredibly empowering toolkit. We understand the biology of friction. We know how to space our practice. We know how to interleave, and we know how to build mental models. We have the ultimate system.
We do.
But, and I see a glaring vulnerability in all of this, it brings us back to our very first point about the brain tricking us.
Right? The ego.
As human beings, we are notoriously terrible at judging our own competence. You mentioned earlier that we constantly grade our own fluency when we reread.
We think we're experts.
Yeah. Even if I start using flashcards and interleaving, how do I prevent myself from sliding back into my cognitive blind spots? How do I actually know if my mental models are accurate, or if I'm just aggressively reinforcing my own ignorance?
That is the crucial fail-safe we must build into the system. To prevent our egos from sabotaging our learning, we have to develop high-level metacognition.
Metacognition.
Yes, metacognition is the practice of thinking about your own thinking.
Yeah.
It is the ability to step outside yourself and accurately monitor, evaluate, and regulate your own learning processes.
Because left entirely to our own devices, we will always assume we are doing a great job.
We are practically wired for self-deception. We succumb heavily to confirmation bias, actively seeking out only the information that proves our pre-existing theories, and hindsight bias, where we look at the answer key and tell ourselves, oh, I knew that all along, I just misread the question.
Oh, I do that all the time.
We all do. But in the realm of deep learning, the most dangerous trap is called the illusion of explanatory depth.
The illusion of explanatory depth. Walk me through that.
It is the arrogant assumption that we fully understand how a complex system works, simply because we interact with it on a daily basis. To illustrate this, let me ask you a question.
Okay, shoot.
Do you know how a standard toilet works?
Sure. You push the silver handle, the water flushes down the bowl, and new water fills the tank. It's pretty simple.
It feels simple. But if I handed you a blank piece of paper and a pen right now, and I asked you to draw a highly detailed, step-by-step schematic of the internal valve system, the physics of the siphon effect, and the exact mechanical regulation of the water level, could you do it?
Absolutely not. I would draw like a rectangle for a tank, an oval for a bowl, maybe a little rubber flapper thing, and then I would completely freeze. I have no idea how the physics actually operate.
Most people cannot. Yet, until they are forced to draw the schematic, they walk around believing they understand plumbing.
That is wild.
That is the illusion of explanatory depth. We mistake our familiarity with the interface for an understanding of the mechanics. To shatter these blind spots, we have to ritualize two practices: reflection and calibration.
Let's break those down. What does reflection practically look like for someone trying to learn a new skill?
Reflection is a deliberate, structured pause after a significant task, whether that is a study session, a sales pitch, or a surgical procedure. You sit down and ask yourself brutal, probing questions. What exactly went well? What specifically broke down? What concepts did I struggle to retrieve?
It's watching the game tape.
Exactly. It is the act of turning your own performance into an objective artifact of study.
Okay, and calibration, what is that?
Calibration is the act of using objective external measurements to align your perceived performance with your actual verifiable capability.
So not just trusting my gut.
You cannot rely on your gut feeling to tell you if you are ready for the presentation. Your gut will lie to you. You must use practice tests, seek out unvarnished peer feedback, and engage in real-world trials. You have to constantly smash your internal assumptions against the concrete wall of external reality.
That is so essential because it is incredibly easy to sit in a vacuum, read a book, and convince yourself you are a genius.
It happens every day.
Now, speaking of assumptions that need to be smashed against a wall, there is a massive elephant in the room that we absolutely must address before we wrap up.
I think I know where you're going with this.
If you have ever attended a corporate training seminar, or if you have set foot in an educational institution in the last 30 years, you have been bombarded with a very specific theory. I am talking about learning styles.
Ah, yes. The incredibly persistent, pervasive myth of the visual, auditory, and kinesthetic learner.
Right, people say it all the time. I can't learn from a lecture. I'm a visual learner. I need a color-coded chart. Or I can't read a manual. I'm a kinesthetic learner. I need to touch the machinery. And I will freely admit I have identified as a visual learner for my entire adult life.
That's very common.
It's practically part of my personality at this point. I use it as an excuse all the time when I don't want to listen to a long audio briefing.
You are far from alone. It is a massively popular concept. Millions of people, and indeed thousands of educators, deeply believe that an individual can only learn effectively if the information is tailored specifically to their preferred sensory modality.
Right, that you have a type.
But the rigorous scientific research presented in Make It Stick, backed by decades of cognitive psychology, has thoroughly, categorically, and unequivocally debunked the learning styles theory.
Wait. Categorically, you're saying there is no truth to it at all. It is completely fabricated.
The science is overwhelming. Studies have repeatedly shown that matching the method of instruction to a student's preferred learning style yields absolutely zero improvement in actual learning outcomes or objective test scores.
Zero.
Zero.
You mean I do not have to stress about finding a visual way to learn conversational Spanish?
Not only do you not have to stress about it, but trying to force Spanish into a purely visual format is likely severely holding back your progress.
My mind is blown.
The fundamental truth that the science reveals is this: optimal learning does not depend on the preferences of the learner. It depends entirely on matching the instructional method to the inherent nature of the subject matter itself.
Oh, wow. That fundamentally shifts the entire paradigm. Match the method to the subject, not the student.
Exactly. Let's look at the logic. Geometry is an inherently visual and spatial subject. You cannot teach geometry effectively through an audio recording.
Obviously not.
Music theory and language pronunciation are inherently auditory. You cannot teach someone to have perfect pitch by having them read a textbook.
Right.
Physics requires abstract, conceptual reasoning. You must use the modality that best represents the material being taught. When we label ourselves as visual learners or auditory learners, we are not expressing a biological reality.
What are we doing then?
We are artificially limiting our own potential. We are giving ourselves a pseudoscientific excuse to disengage the moment the material gets difficult or is presented in a way we aren't comfortable with.
That is incredibly liberating. It takes the pressure off the endless search for how I learn best and puts the focus entirely back on what does this specific material demand of me?
Exactly.
It shifts the responsibility away from our identity and onto our effort, which perfectly transitions into the overarching mindset we bring to the table, doesn't it?
It really does.
If we walk around believing we have fixed, immutable limits like a rigid learning style, we will act accordingly.
Mindset is the soil in which all of these techniques either grow or wither. What truly matters for long-term intelligence and skill acquisition is not your preferred sensory style, but your fundamental belief about your own capacity.
Right.
This aligns perfectly with the psychologist Carol Dweck's seminal research on fixed versus growth mindsets.
The growth mindset.
Yes, if you operate with a fixed mindset, if you believe your intelligence is a static quantity assigned at birth, that you are simply bad at math or not a natural public speaker, you will naturally fear failure.
Because failure proves you're bad at it.
Exactly. You will avoid difficult challenges because struggling implies that you lack innate talent and you want to protect your ego.
And as we've established today, if you actively avoid the struggle, you are avoiding the exact biological mechanism required for true learning. You are guaranteeing your own stagnation.
Precisely. Conversely, adopting a growth mindset is the profound understanding that your brain is quite literally a highly adaptable organ that responds to stress. It grows denser, stronger, and more interconnected through effort, strategic friction, and deliberate practice.
It's awesome.
Exactly like a muscle. When you truly internalize a growth mindset, you no longer view a failed practice quiz or a clumsy attempt at a new language as proof of your stupidity. You view it as a desirable difficulty.
You welcome it.
Yes, you recognize that the failure is actively building the neuroplasticity required for future success. It empowers you to aggressively lean into the friction.
To embrace the absolute chaos of interleaving, to welcome the terrifying panic of spaced forgetting, and to actually enjoy the struggle of generating an answer before you even know what you are doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You realize that your cognitive potential is not a fixed jar that you are trying to fill. It is a landscape that you are actively terraforming, and it is entirely unlocked by your willingness to embrace the right kind of difficulty.
This has been a total paradigm shift. We have spent this deep dive completely tearing down the comfortable, passive ways we were taught to operate, and we have built a system that is demanding, frustrating, and incredibly empowering.
It is hard work,
Yeah.
but it's the only work that lasts.
For everyone listening, if you want to make a permanent structural shift in how you acquire and retain knowledge, here is the synthesis of everything we have uncovered. You have to abandon the illusion of knowing.
Throw with a highlighter.
Yes.
Put it down.
Stop rereading your notes a dozen times and mistaking that smooth visual fluency for actual cognitive mastery. Instead, you must purposefully engineer friction into your life.
Use active retrieval.
Force yourself to pull the information out of the dark. Space your practice sessions over days and weeks, allowing yourself to forget just enough that it actually hurts a little bit to remember.
It has to hurt a little.
Stop doing blocked, repetitive practice where you do the same thing 20 times in a row and start interleaving your subjects to force your brain to identify patterns in the chaos. Build rich, adaptable mental models by stripping away the jargon and explaining complex systems as if you were talking to a 10-year-old.
Shatter the illusion of depth.
Exactly. And finally, drop the limiting, debunked belief that you only learn in one specific sensory style. The brain adapts to the demands placed upon it. Learning is not something that happens to you passively while you sit in a comfortable chair and listen to a lecture. It is an active, effortful, deeply personal journey of construction.
It is a lifelong journey, and the science gives us the precise tools to navigate it. As we conclude, I think this material leaves us with an incredibly provocative question, one that extends far beyond our individual study habits and cuts to the core of our society.
Let's hear it.
If the rigorous cognitive science proves that matching instruction to learning styles yields zero improvement, and if the empirical data definitively shows that blocked, easy, heavily guided practice creates false illusions of mastery that lead to rapid forgetting,
Yeah.
how much time, money, and human potential is currently being catastrophically wasted in our global education systems? How many multi-million-dollar corporate training programs are utterly functionally useless?
Oh, man. Probably most of them.
What would our society, our scientific progress, and our economy look like if we stopped designing curriculums optimized for the immediate comfort and compliance of the student and instead started designing them exclusively around the biologically necessary friction of desirable difficulties?
That is a staggering thought to leave on. Imagine a world optimized for actual retention and deep mastery instead of just checking a box and moving on to the next slide.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Now it is your turn. Go out there, throw away the highlighter, allow yourself to struggle a little bit, and make your knowledge stick. See you next time.